Hi, my name is Kyle and welcome to my channel. This is the Conservative Take, and this is going to be a election heavy video. Normally we take culture, TV, and movies and we filter it right. And this time we're going to talk about the election in November and what is going on with that. We just had some primaries that happened on Tuesday. So what were the results? We're going to talk about some of that. But the main thing we're going to talk about is what happened with the approval rating in the black community for President Trump as it gets above 40%. Incredible. And so with so much stuff going on, with the pandemic, with the riots, with the stock market going down, losing so many points in the Dow, with the unemployment rate going incredibly high, and with us losing over 40 million jobs around this country, that has to have an impact on the presidency. And we're going to take a look at that, particularly a couple of primaries. And we're going to start off by talking about the main thing is the approval rating in the black community. And right now it's showing that based on the daily polling that Rasmussen reports does, this is for likely voters, that Trump's approval rating has gone up to 41%. And I'm going to talk to you about this, but before I do that, I'm going to jump a little bit into the actual primaries of what happened, because what's happening overall in this country is really fascinating. And I have some numbers here for you. And what these numbers tell me is that the enthusiasm level for Trump is really at an all-time high. He is breaking incumbent primary turnout numbers we haven't seen. He has right now 15 million votes in the primaries. That's a record. If you want to compare that to other people, Mitt Romney only got 10 million votes when he ran in the primaries in 2008. But this is going to be something that is going to be looked at carefully, because enthusiasm is really, really important here. And it's something that we have an indication that when 2016 was going on, we pretty much could predict the election because of what was the turnout in the primaries and how that could translate into November. So I'm gonna go over a few things here before I talk about specifically on the black approval ratings. I'm gonna jump over here to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state that had a primary on Tuesday. And what I want to point out right here is that Donald Trump, President Trump, got 918,000 votes in an uncontested election for the primary, which means people were highly motivated to come out. If you want to compare that to what he got in 2016 with Hillary in that primary, he got 902,000 votes. Hillary got 935. So I'm sure you're asking me now, what did Joe Biden get? And if you look at Joe Biden, he got 856,000 votes. Now, if you want to take in and factor in the Bernie Sanders votes, I have those numbers for you as well. Looks like if you factor those numbers in, he's going to get 1,066 votes. If you factor in roughly, give or take, the Bernie Sanders vote. Now, if you factor in the fact that Bernie will probably lose 30% of those votes to Trump, in other words, of the votes that Bernie got, in this case, it was 199,000. Biden, you can expect him to get 60% of that, and you can expect Trump to get 30% of that. Then it's pretty much a deadlock in terms of the actual percentages for the primaries. But still, President Trump is outperforming what he did in 2016, and Biden is underperforming what Hillary got in 2016. So, because Hillary got 935,000, and again, Biden is looking at 857,000 by himself. But if you throw in the 199 from Bernie, he's looking at 1,000 when you factor in the give or take. And there's several other candidates here that weren't factored in. They can go either way. And we can pretty much just say that that's just going to be pretty much what we can expect from that in terms of the primary, because all of the numbers are in. Let's take a look also at another key state that is interesting in Trump's performance in the primaries on Tuesday, and that's going to be the Indiana primary. And Indiana primary looks like Joe Biden here got 359,000 votes to Donald Trump's 492,000 votes. Trump is pulling in 92% of the Republican voters in a primary year, in a primary year, in an uncontested year. And if I were to back up a little bit here and talk to you about Pennsylvania, I forgot to mention counties like Allegheny County ran out of ballots. They ran out of ballots. And so some of those votes aren't even in there because they didn't get a chance to vote. So the number for Trump is even going to be lower for that as well. With the economy doing what it did, and the fact that today they announced the job results for May, they were anticipating the job growth to be negative 7.5% in terms of millions of jobs lost in May. But what do we see? In a month full of chaos, we saw Trump actually gain 2.5 million jobs. And that really is a plus 10% swing from expectations to actual reality. So the experts had it all wrong. President Trump gave a press conference. He bragged about it as he should have. And what I've said before about this economy is that it is an economy that is resilient because it's based not on one factor, but it's based on several factors, on the regulations being pinned down, on energy, on the tax bill they put in. All of that played a huge factor in the economy just being as stable as it is and allowing the workforce to do what they do. Now, some will say, of course, there's an issue with like the bailouts, and that was part of it, which of course it probably was. But Trump also gave money to small businesses, and that's not really giving him a lot of credit because it's not talked about that much. Okay, I'm going to keep this video short. I'm going to jump right to this story where President Trump, again, in Rasmussen, has a over 40% approval rating with blacks. And so this is from the Rush Limbaugh show. I'm going to just read what he said here. He said, Rush says, "Hey, I've got a story. I've had this since the program began, and I'm confused. I don't see how this can be. I'm very wary of telling you this, but here we go. Rasmussen reports. The survey people, the polling, have reported that black voter approval for Trump has surged to over 40%. Right here you see Trump has 40% for approval for that, and he has the 45% of independent as well, and overall approval rating of 48%. And let me say this is going to be likely voters. Likely voters, and the way Rasmussen does it, is a lot more accurate than what you'll see in other polling areas. Early on, typically you see registered voters, and that whole process is a complicated thing. I'll have a show on that eventually, on that and how that's pinned out, how you get likely voters versus registered voters and how that plays out. It's based on phone calling and metrics and expectation and assumptions. And it all comes down to the internal formulas of these pollsters and how they play out based on bias, and also how they make sure that they get a proper sample of what they're trying to poll. And so that's all in there. But Rasmussen has been one of the more accurate polls of the past 6 or 7 election cycles. And so this is a good poll to go on. And they seem to get things right. One thing Rasmussen was able to do, even in 2016, was understand the monster vote. And the monster vote is essentially the vote that's not recorded. It's the vote that's not being touted or calculated by the pollsters because they, one, don't know how to get them, or number 2, just want to leave them out because they're afraid of the results. That's just how it is. People do these polls. So anyway, he says here, Rush says, say what? Despite the recent riots over police brutality, Rasmussen says that black approval for job of the President Trump is now over 40%. Our presidential tracking poll today, our daily presidential tracking poll today, shows black likely voter approval of the job Trump is doing is now over 40%. This goes back to about 11 o'clock this morning. And so he talks about this, and people are shocked by this. You know what? I'm not. I'm really not. And I got confirmation on this because I was looking on Facebook and I actually saw a ad from the Wall Street Journal saying how the Democrats are trying their best to woo black male voters, because that is the reason Trump is doing so well. The needle for black females is not going to go that much. But the good thing about that is it's not going to go higher either, because right now it's sitting at around 98% black female support. So no matter what the candidate is, whether it be a black female or someone that's enticing to a black female, in terms of the vice presidential candidate, it's not going to move that needle at all. But what is moving is the black male vote. And as a black male, I can tell you, and this article this ad in the Wall Street Journal was totally saying the same thing, was that because President Trump says it the way it is, the way he's matter of fact, the way he's always been that dude, man. I'm telling you, going back to the 80s, man, Trump was that dude. Everybody loved this dude. And I think what people are saying is that they just like his leadership style. If you have coming from a sense of you want authority and you don't want anyone telling you, I mean, if you want someone to tell you straight up what's going on and be 100 with everything, then that's the kind of person that Trump's going to attract. And black men like that. And I think that's what's happening. I think that needle is moving just enough that it's causing that vote to go from anywhere from, it was from 18% at one point, it's like 30%, and now it's 40%. And so whether or not that turns out and translates to actual votes, it doesn't really matter, because even if they get half of that, we're still at 20%. And that is still going to be devastating for the Democrats, especially when you look at the numbers from Pennsylvania. And that's kind of why I brought that up, because Pennsylvania is going to be a key state for President Trump to take this particular election. He's going to need to carry everything he carried before, and he can lose a few states. But if he picks up Pennsylvania, or if he picks up Michigan, if he holds Wisconsin, it's going to be pretty much that kind of situation. But if he were to lose Georgia, he would have to have Pennsylvania definitely to balance that off. So right now it looks like President Trump is doing extremely well, considering how the rocky start, when the riots start to happen. He seems to have bounced back from that. He seems to have bounced back from the job numbers. That seems to be doing really well. And at this pace, by my calculations, all the job numbers will have come back by July of 2021, his first year of his second term. And I will say this here, I have a note here that the Dow Jones went from around 30,000 to 20,000, right to about 19,000. And I'm gonna give a shout out to my buddy Paul, if you're watching this. He said it was not going to go below the bottom, which was 18, I think, when Obama had that. And it didn't. It bottomed out at about 19, and now it's come back to where it's gained 70% of its losses in the stock market. That is incredible. Trump is on a roll. Good things are happening. He's putting law and order in, and that's what the voters are looking for. They want a president who is a law and order president. The polling numbers are very strong on that. And so we'll see how this plays out. But right now, the president is looking really good in the polling, and this black approval rating is absolutely devastating, considering everything we've seen. They've thrown the kitchen sink at this man, and yet he's still rolling at a 48% approval and 40% black approval. So that, if you guys like what I do on this channel, I encourage you to check me out, and I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and like it and share with your friends. We're trying to go to a 10,000 subscriber goal, and we want to have you come along with us because we have a lot of plans we want to do, and we're hoping that we can get that done with that number of people, because a lot of things happen when you get to 10,000 people. A lot of things can happen, and it makes it a lot easier to put out more content. I'm not asking people for money, but subscribers can help do that without asking people for money. So with that, check out some content that I have right here.